Today, I want to discuss private property, liberty, and power in the sense of business and economics. And we can further, expand this into other areas of society. And I believe this is a topic we're often going to come back to because it's a very ancient topic that men have fought many wars to actually, address in the right manner. I'll read this statement here to set the grounds for this conversation. The nature and limits of power which can be legitimately exercised by society over the individual are vital questions seldom stated and hardly ever discussed in general terms has divided mankind from the remotest ages. We often refer to Greek, Rome, England. In old times, this contest was between subjects or some classes of subjects and the government. So this statement basically says, since in recorded history, it's been a struggle between authority and basically the general populace. My take on this would be most regions on this planet, if not every, have had war. We fought wars, to conquer and to inevitably the victor tells a story, and often the victor sets the ground rules for property rights and liberty, basically. So the state protects your property and your liberty, and that's what's transpired for many, many, many years. And now humanity and civilization is, coming to some sort of enlightenment in forms of various technologies, sort of blockchains and so on, to say, there's a very famous saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And I want to speak about this in the sense of prosperity. In the ancient times, we had a king and there were peasants. And this king often had access to irrigation systems in the manner that the peasants will go to the lake and bring the water. And the king will often have an irrigation system directly to the house at the expense of the individual going out there and laboring for the well-being of this authority figure, right? But with the industrialization in the modern age, the average Joe, the average folk has the opportunity to have water in their house through systems of industry. So, with that being said, the average person has a vastly better life because of industry. And I would further argue to say the individuals or the authority figures in power, kings, queens, or be it any sort of government, they tax these people, and their wealth is vastly still superior. But now let's think about the way we've been doing some of these things. We now understand that prosperity thrives in a free society with private property and liberty. And America has done an amazing thing by decentralizing power from within the state. There's a lot of departments that oversee many aspects of the society. And now we're understanding that even through this system, it's not perfect. It works. It's better than having an individual make all the choices. But even through this system, there's still leakage of corruption in that sense. So now we have blockchains, and a blockchain is ultimately protecting your private property, not through enforcement. It's actually protecting it, if you think about that, through prevention. In a blockchain, you're just not able. You just can't mathematically, do anything. or to say you can't double spend because it's prevented. So there is no justice in that sense. Rather than in the physical world, if I violate your property, I could violate your property, and there's going to be have to be justice in that sense, and justice is a very costly process, as we've seen in modern times. So I would like to open this up. Oh, pardon me there. Yeah. So I would like to open this up. We think about this in the sense that how do we make sure we're maximizing private property? And I want to read a statement here. Pardon me. And before I read that, so the discussion would be further, one would argue to say communism and capitalism, clearly capitalism works better than communism. And capitalism, you would argue to say, is the closest thing to private property. And some would argue to say, the printage of money by state prevents things like bank runs, and it stabilizes the economy and so on, that these PhDs tend to argue. But let's just come to the chase today. And we need to come to a hardcore fact and realization to say that the separation of ideas such as state from government, pardon me, rather, the separation of property from government needs to start occurring, because we have the technology for it. And the further separation of money from state, and the further separation from money from individual or individual human intellect. Gold in the founding days was a great money because we never had, vast industry and equipment to get it as fast as we can out of the ground. So now we can. So human intellect actually, goes against the stability of money. But now, with stuff like Bitcoin, where it's hard capped, there's just no way you can increase the 21 million limit that you're going to have. So you're not betting against human intellect at that juncture. And then further, there's no single issuer of this currency, which further trickles down into the behavior of society. So money is something that society overlooks. As self-interested humans, we can't trust a single entity to issue or control the money supply. And putting that on a blockchain to further protect the property rights that this monetary system, operates in, is a truly, truly liberating endeavor. And I'm lost of words of how, to really express that, because it's something that humans clearly have fought, multiple wars, thinking, there's scarcity in nature, there's scarcity in land, and there's scarcity in cars, and we try to, create this artificial scarcity, to create wealth, when wealth is actually created in abundance. And I always come back to this saying to say technology is the ultimate liberator of everything. So as technology advances, and there's a saying about technology being, what we call magic, wealth that is preserved or protected by authority through fear ultimately becomes diminished. It becomes a wealth of no innovation. And innovation is the only way that liberates. And what ultimately liberates humans is technology. So as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as dreamers, we need to understand that the contribution, to the race or to society ultimately liberates everybody. And, endeavoring through private issued, decentralized, cryptographically protected currency is the way forward to ultimately trickle down into further funding of innovation that's going to, release and free everybody from tyranny. So that was my take there. And I'd like to open, if any statement I made here you find not so true, or I'm full of it, feel free. Feel free to, you know, feel free to think about it. Ultimately, it's about putting thoughts out there and see how we can ultimately innovate, how, whatever works right now, and how could this be better? It's working, but how could we make sure the poorest, become rich as quick as possible, and as rich as possible, as one chooses to be? And ultimately, when individuals attain wealth, that trickles down to everybody else. If one gets rich, we benefit from his endeavors, the innovation that occurs with that individual. I read a statement here, uh, as part of a short conclusion here, based on my thoughts on that introduction statement. It says, when we come to subjects as complicated as the one we're discussing today, three-fourths of the arguments of every disputed opinion consist in dispelling the appearance which favors some opinion which differ from it. He always study his adversary's case with great intensity, if not still greater intensity than his own. So some thoughts I put out there right now is I've greatly intensely explored them with greater intensity than opinions that some individuals might have to say communism and socialism or whatever ism out there, whether it's just words we put on certain ideals, but rather i'm I'm stating free people and free money, and ingenuity ultimately liberates everybody. But the lack of understanding and putting forth these ideas might be detrimental to the race. So hopefully that sunk in. Looking forward to sharing some of these other ideas and thoughts. But until next time, good friend.